so we don't get stuck in traditions. So we don't get stuck in the, man, this is what we've been doing this for years. We like it and we feel really comfortable. Keep church fluid, keep mission as your major focus. Not that we throw out church, but church is a consequence of mission. Church is the consequence of you gather together, you're praying for the lost, you're finding yourself in the harvest. It's living and it's life and it's fluid. So this idea of fluid church can really kind of help us. Well said.
It's interesting in the New Testament. It doesn't actually. I have to say I've been focused on church planting for many years, but it doesn't actually say go out and plant churches. It actually says go out and make disciples. And like Dave was just saying, and others were saying, when that's the focus, of course disciples want to gather, and that's the church. But if that becomes the focus, which very easily it does. So easy, even for home groups, house churches, whatever you want to have, so easily that becomes the focus. Alright, the next question is there a difference between a believer, born again, and like believer and born again in brackets, and a disciple? So maybe we'll start at this end this time. Why not? Yeah. So is there a difference between a believer and a disciple?
Well, let me ask another question. Is there a difference between an obedient disciple and a disobedient disciple? A spirit-filled disciple and a carnal disciple? Well, the answer is yes. So I think that's kind of more the question. Rather than focus on are we over the line or aren't we over the line, we focus on where is the back of Jesus and am I following him?
This comes down to the area of soteriology, where we look at salvation, what is salvation, and how do we do it. And in the Western Church, we have reduced soteriology to a formulaic respond to this formula and you are saved. Coming out of a great tradition of justification by faith and a theology of grace that pervades the Western Protestant Church. And hence the result is respond to the altar call. If you believe, repent of your sin, say you're sorry and turn up at church, you're kind of saved. The tragic result is that we have divided the idea of being a Christian and being a disciple into two different camps. And this perhaps would have been unfathomable to Jesus and perhaps even the early church for the first 300 years, where discipleship was at the core of what it meant to become a follower and to become part of the Jesus movement, the way. And I think in the West we have to wrestle with this theology of soteriology and grace and understand what we're trying to talk about, because are we inviting people into the lordship and following of Jesus, or are we just giving salvation as a free, simple package of grace that when you can say, tick the box, I can sit back and go, oh, fantastic, I'm saved. And this is the fundamental wrestle. This is I hit this all the time in trying to help Christians understand discipleship. You know, Mahatma Gandhi would say, looking at if all Christians followed the teachings of Jesus, the whole world would be Christian, because he looked at Jesus and understood that the disparity between Christians' behaviour and what Christ taught was so vast that it created a great credibility gap and witness gap. I think we have to wrestle through this really quite seriously. We have to have people to think and be able to provide reasoned theological responses in this area of grace and understanding the relationship of grace and discipleship, that the church might embrace perhaps a a different view of salvation. I personally am moving far more towards a, how dare you call me Lord, Lord, and don't do what I say, theology. This is the bar that Jesus seems to come to again and again and again in the Gospels. Incredibly challenging when we've been raised in this Protestant theology of grace. It's all, well, that don't give me the works, brother. You can't get saved by works. So is there a difference between being born again and being a disciple? In Western Protestant theology, yes. It shouldn't be there. It shouldn't be there. Discipleship and the movement that Jesus started was a movement of discipleship. We have to wrestle through that tension.
Just a quick illustrative story. A colleague of mine who started training people in 2009 in North Carolina after returning from the mission field and seeing movements happen, was training people to use simple tools to share the gospel. Their story, Jesus' story, Discovery Bible Study. And one of the simple exercises was for people to make a list of people they know who weren't Christian. And they were finding, as they're training lots of people, people in North Carolina were having a really hard time identifying people that they knew who weren't Christian. And so they changed the question, make a list of people you know who are far from God. And all of a sudden, the list started to fill up. And it was a little tweak, but we have a funny mindset. And so in that context, because there's so many Baptist churches, almost everybody had at one time in their life, as a child or a teenager or a young adult, gone forward and prayed the prayer. But, the mindset is, oh yeah, they're Christian, but are they near to God? No, they're far from God. Oh, I know a lot of people like that. So to me, it's more important whether someone's far from God or near to God than whether they've prayed a prayer.